And welcome in to the Skol Purple Podcast, episode number 22. I'm Carson Schubert, along with Kevin Brown for this episode. Kevin, how's it going there tonight?
Terrific. Yeah,
Yeah,
football's
good.
back.
Yeah, football's back. Whether we're ready for it or not, it is back, and here we are. And it seems like just yesterday we were talking about the Vikings and the coaching search and what's going to happen. And here we are with Kevin O'Connell, and we're just a week away or 2 weeks away from the first preseason game for the Vikings. So it's coming around the corner.
Yep.
So it's good to meet up with you. It's been a while, I think, since you and I have been on an episode together. So it's good to reconnect that way, and it's good to hopefully get some more people into the show today as well, and looking forward to talking Vikings as always. Well, last week we talked about, Dryce and I talked about last week on the show about the 53-man roster projection for the Vikings offense, and we're going to shift over to the defensive side today. And we were looking at an article on SI.com written by Will Raggets and his 53-man projection. So let's go ahead and just dive right into that, Kevin, if we can. And then we will also go through our confidence level on position groups for the Vikings. And as we go on, we'll talk about some training camp. Actually, you know what? Let's just start out. I know I'm very organized. Let's just start out with your camp observations here, Kevin. What have you seen so far? We haven't talked to you since camp started. So what's your thoughts on how the Vikings have done here in the first week of camp? Obviously, some ups and downs with different things.
Well, it's interesting. The honeymoon with the new coaching staff is kind of fading a little bit, and you're getting down to having to coach players and correct mistakes, and so you're starting to see things kind of sort themselves out again, where certain guys are emerging and showing quickly that they can be a part of the rotation or the game plan, and then some people aren't. But the vibe seems good, and they've had a few nicks and stuff, but to this point, no major injuries, and it looks like some of the younger guys are emerging, and some people maybe aren't. So it's going to be interesting to see the first game in live pads with these guys and the new schemes.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Obviously, I think the biggest news maybe is the Irv Smith news that he is out at least for this until the start of the regular season, it sounds like, which can be concerning, obviously, because we know his history, but it seems like a lot less of a big deal compared to his other injury that he had last year. So
Yeah.
I guess the only real concern for the Vikings there is, like, if it was a wide receiver that went down, maybe it's not as big of a deal because there's a lot of depth. But when you lose Irv Smith, who is by far and away your best tight end, and it's not even close, where are you going to go for depth if you have to start Johnny Munt and Zach Davidson in week one? That's the question I think that some Vikings fans would like an answer to. And just hearing that there has been some talks about some free agent tight ends that could potentially come to Minnesota, but nothing seems to be imminent, at least. What are your thoughts on the Irv Smith injury? Do you think that he should be back, no problem? And do you think that the Vikings should try and get some depth there?
Well, it sounds like everything went well with the surgery. It sounds like, there's, as Wes Phillips said in his presser, there's nothing wrong with his lower half, and that's critical. And so it's going to take however long it's going to take for this thing to heal. And I think he's back, and I don't think there should be much concern about him coming back and being ready to play, and hopefully the thumb's healed up so it doesn't affect his pass catching ability. I don't know that there's anything out there that you bring in and knows the scheme and really helps you at this point anyway. I think they're really confident in Munt as a guy that can step in and do things. I think they've seen enough of Ellefson to know that he can contribute in this scheme, and I think Zach Davidson has been a little bit of a pleasant surprise. I think has taken a step forward after last year. Just really looking very out of place at the NFL level. That said, I'm sure he's still got a ways to go, and you know, but the indications are that he's got a future in the NFL. From what I've heard the coaches talk about him, and the amount of playing time he's getting, and the reps he's getting, and the plays he's making. So, um, it's not a great position of depth, but um, I think it's okay.
Yeah, and I think it would be different if the Vikings were in the old scheme where it was more, you see more 2 or 3 tight end looks, but I don't think there's going to be that much of that in this new Kevin O'Connell system.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Like, when Smith's there and healthy, he's going to be a factor in the passing game. And I think they like Munt as both a blocker and I think he's an underrated receiver. But they'll play to whatever talent they have, and I think to some degree they seem very positive about CJ Ham, who can do a lot of things and almost be a pseudo H-back tight end. And, maybe he'd pick up a few more reps than normal if Smith was out longer. So I don't get the impression they're in any kind of a panic mode, and they'd be ready to go. So
yeah, I think they are just kind of taking it day by day with that situation, and like you said too, and Zach Davidson. Not sure what happened there. Zach Davidson, he has been performing well in training camp, at least this week. I've heard more so than last week, but
yep.
So that's an encouraging sign, to say the least. If you're, again, another one of those 2021 draft picks that you're like, oh well, here comes this guy. Like, I had no idea that this guy could actually do anything, because last year, obviously, we know that Zimmer didn't want to play any of those draft picks, or very rarely wanted to play any of those draft picks.
Yeah, yeah, and Davidson is like, he's 6'7" and he runs in the 4.6s, and at the college level he looked like he was playing against middle school teams. He was so physically superior and dominant. But those numbers translate pretty well to the NFL level too. And he's the kind of guy that he starts making a couple plays in the passing game, and his confidence builds, and their confidence in him builds, and he's got a role in an offense and can make some plays here and there. So
feel free, if you have a question for either one of us or both of us about the Vikings, go ahead and send us a comment in the comments section if you would like, and we would be happy to answer that question for you. We are going to move on, I think, Kevin, unless you have anything else you wanted to say about camp so far. We can go ahead and move on to the 53-man roster projection.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So let's go ahead and read off some of these projections. Again, we're focusing on the defensive side for the Vikings now. Last week, you could go back and watch last week's episode with Dryce and I. We went through the offense and our confidence level via grading how we felt about the offensive position groups. And so let's move to defense, and let's start on the defensive line. Let's go with the D tackles. It looks like first, Dalvin Tomlinson, Harrison Phillips, Armon Watts, Easy Atamaweo, I probably butchered that. James Lynch and Jonathan Bullard are considered on the defensive line. And you're probably wondering, well, where's Daniil Hunter? Where's Zadarius Smith? They are in the linebackers. We'll get to those in a minute. But is there anybody on that list that you are surprised that's on the team? And is there anybody that you would say that should be on that isn't on?
You said Phillips, Tomlinson, Watts, Atumnowent. I butchered it even worse.
Atamiwo, yeah.
James
Atamiwo.
Lynch and Jonathan Bullard.
Yep.
Okay, I think Jalen Twyman's in the mix
Yeah.
to crack that. He's in phenomenal shape, and he's has kind of an unusual body frame, but he has really long arms, and he's powerful and quick. And I just think, I get the impression he's flashed enough that he could, I guess, him over maybe Bullard.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, Bullard's a little bit of a surprise to me. Like I mean, I know he's got some talent, but over Twyman, that's a little bit surprising, I would say.
Yeah, I think Bullard is an experienced veteran that has played and made a team and stuff, but I suspect Twyman has more upside. And and then Sazy, the kid from Minnesota. I just don't know how ready he'll be right out of the chute, but I also don't know that they could stash him or practice squad him. So I think they carry him, and yeah.
Well, let's move to the linebackers. Daniil Hunter, Zadarius Smith as outside linebackers, obviously. And then in the middle, you have Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks. And those would be considered your 4 starters there. And then you have DJ Wanham, Patrick Jones II, Janarius Robinson, Brian Asamoah, and Blake Lynch, all making the team in that linebacker core. What are your thoughts there?
It could play out that way, yeah. If Chaz Surratt doesn't show up, at least on special teams, so I mean he's got more upside than some of these other guys, but he has yet to show it. I think Asamoah will be a good special teams guy. I don't think for the most part these backups are going to get a bunch of playing time.
No. But
they need to have depth because the last couple of years they've been decimated. Right. I think they're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if like a Janarius Robinson, a Surratt, Luigi, Villain, like those guys are practice squad candidates, maybe. So, the Blake Lynch is an interesting guy. Made it as a undrafted free agent, a guy that actually played cornerback in college, and he played some the last 2 years with Zimmer, and I don't know. He, maybe he keeps developing and does make the team over guys that were 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. What do you think about Janarius Robinson? Do you think he's as good as some of the reports have been? I'm not convinced that he's going to make this team. I guess I don't know what the early camp impressions on him have been, but
yeah, he seems like more a practice squad guy now. He needs another year of seasoning, but he's a phenomenal physical specimen. You can see that right away, but he looked totally clueless last year, and so it just depends. Like if he flashes too much, in a preseason game, they might have a hard time sneaking him through to the practice squad. I'd be surprised if he makes such an impact, though, that he has to make the 53. But I guess if he does, that's a good thing, because the ceiling is higher on him than I think it is for, say, a DJ Wanham, or maybe even Patrick Jones. So
yeah. Very well could be. You mentioned Chaz Surratt. Also, Troy Dye was a notable cut from the linebacker group. So, and I only say that he's notable because he was a draft pick just in 2020, a 4th-round pick, and obviously he has not lived up to the billing that the Vikings had hoped that he would. So, and I know you had mentioned quite a few times that you don't think that he's that great either. So, I think that could vary.
Just not a fan.
Yeah.
But and I think Asamoah is probably not ready to contribute at linebacker, but I think he's very ready to contribute on special teams. And I haven't seen Troy Dye truly stand out on special teams, which would be a way to solidify his value on the roster and as a backup. So
yep.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, well, let's move over to the cornerback position. Patrick Peterson, obviously. Cam Dantzler, who's been tremendous, I've heard, in camp so far. Andrew Booth Jr., another standout in camp so far. Chandon Sullivan, your lockdown slot corner. I shouldn't say lockdown, but good, above average slot corner. And then a Caleb Evans and Nate Hairston are the corners here. Now, that's a little surprising to me, Nate Hairston over a guy maybe like Harrison Hand. That makes the roster at the cornerback position. They also mentioned down here Chris Boyd and Perry Nickerson being two guys that don't make the team. So that's a little bit surprising to me. Those three are all out. Not that Chris Boyd is all that surprising, but maybe Harrison Hand, because I think I've heard his name making a few plays here and there, but maybe it's not enough, at least at this point.
Yeah, I think. I think Boyd is pretty talented. So if he comes off as being maybe more coachable than he's been, I would think he could beat out a Nate Hairston. I think everything else you said, that's what I'm hearing too, and seeing. Dantzler's played well, and to me it looks like he's just playing with more confidence. He's playing tighter. He's not just back on his heels as much, and he's playing aggressive, and his instincts are kicking in, and his ball skills and his length and all that. And I think Booth has brought the swagger and confidence and all that incredible athletic ability. And I assume he'll make some mistakes, but maybe he doesn't step in and start from day one. But I think they're pleased with what they have there, and it sounds like a Caleb Evans is in a good place for a rookie. That he's playing with some confidence and making some plays too. So, I think Hairston has the experience in the scheme and everything, but I don't know that he has any more upside potential. So
basically, he's Sean Mannion, but he's a cornerback.
Just to some degree, yeah. So I think it kind of comes down to what they value in maybe that last spot. If if they feel like they're set enough with the other guys, then maybe Hairston is. But if they feel like they need some more potential, maybe they go with Boyd. But I think I think all these guys have played pretty well, and then I think when they get to live action, it'll sort itself out a little more, and we'll see. But
What are your thoughts on Harrison Hand? Would you be surprised if he doesn't make the team, or would that be not
Um,
anything
I
you're
I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't make the team. I think it'd be a pleasant surprise if he did.
okay?
Um, yeah, I think he has shown talent, but I just don't know if he has like any real special, qualities that just haven't been tapped yet because he doesn't understand it. So
Yeah,
I don't know that there's a ton more upside there. So I think, in the secondary, I guess we're not at safeties yet, but I think it's pretty clear that Cam Bynum is very, playing really well, and isn't just going to hand the thing over to Lewis Seen. So, and I think that's a good thing. So,
yeah. Well, let's move over to safeties. You mentioned Bynum and Scene. Let's go over to the starting safeties. And right now, we see it as Harrison Smith and Lewis Scene, and then also Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus making the roster as the four safeties on the Vikings roster. So I've heard rumors that we've seen Lewis Scene in that kind of money backer position in training camp, which I am happy to hear about because I think the overall talent level at the linebacker position outside of Kendricks and Hicks is lacking quite significantly, unless you're considering Hunter and Smith, obviously. But other than that, the athleticism, the ability to cover at that linebacker position is a concern. I think it is.
yep,
And so I'm interested to see if Lewis Seen comes into more of those situations, or if we just see more three safety looks and there's only two or three corners on the field at the time. I'm just kind of interested to see how this new Ed Donatel defense looks, and I think he's got to be somewhat licking his chops, doesn't he? Like, with all the talent that he has, like, obviously there's some things that need to be proven, but there's a lot of different things that he can do just with some of the talented players that he has on this roster.
yeah, I think with Harrison Smith and Bynum and Seen, you have three safeties that can really do a lot of different things. I mean, Harrison Smith can essentially be a linebacker and a run force guy and a blitzer. And Bynum played a lot of cornerback, mostly cornerback in college, so he has the cover skills to be a legit slot cover corner, and he's very instinctive. And then Seen, is has similar potential to Harrison Smith with probably even more elite physical skills, and can do a lot of the same things deep third and at the line of scrimmage and blitzing and run force and hitting and stuff like that. So I think he has a lot of chess pieces to work with there. So
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's not really even a surprise cut for the safeties because there's not really that many in competition.
right.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if Metellus makes it over, other
yeah,
prospects. Um, so he's that's where he is on the depth chart. I just don't know if they keep four
yeah,
safeties or not. When in all likelihood they've got a practice squad guy who's on the field every day and can be promoted. So
yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention too, Dalvin Cook kind of had a minor injury as well at training camp, but I don't think there's. I mean, if he sits out a couple practices, maybe, but other than that, I don't think there's going to be too much of an issue there. It doesn't sound like.
it sounded like O'Connell said today that he's back. Like both him and Madison from their thing are back. So
All right.
and again, not the lower half
Right. Yeah. Again,
with
that's
Cook
important.
is a big deal. Yeah.
And with Cook too, because we
Yeah.
know his history as well. So,
Yeah.
well, let's go ahead and rank the confidence level, I should say, for these defensive players. Let's go back in reverse order. So let's start at safety here, Kevin. On a grading system from A to F, A being the best, obviously, if you're new to the grading system. But let's go ahead and grade the safeties. Where would you put the Vikings safeties? You can use a plus or a minus if you would like as
Yeah,
well.
I would say B plus. Like I think they're pretty solid there. I think they have three good players, potentially elite players there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would probably put it at a B, B plus as well. And we just got a guy that commented, Skolski, welcome in. He said, I have high hopes for our secondary this and upcoming years. And I tell you what, just based on what I've heard in camp and everything, I agree. I think there's a lot of young talent that has come through in the Vikings system. So I think there's a lot to like. I think it's just a matter now of developing that talent and then seeing it pay off on the field on game day.
Yep.
So, yeah, good comment. I think this year might be the toughest year for the secondary in the next few years just because of an adjustment trying to get to the level that they need to get to. A lot of rookies, a lot of young players, but I think with veterans like Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith back there, I think that is immensely huge for the Vikings because if you didn't have those two guys back there, I think there'd be a lot more question marks.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The having those two veteran guys and Shannon Sullivan in the mix, they have some reliability back there, and I think the different looks and the pressure up front with Zadarius Smith, Daniil Hunter, the fact that kind of all these guys in the back seven can blitz effectively too.
Yep.
I think is going to help, and these DBs are going to make some plays on the ball and get some picks, and their confidence is gonna go up, and they're so much of it is just thrives on that confidence level for young guys, especially
Yeah.
corners.
Yeah. I was just going to say corners, especially. I was going to say that earlier when you were talking about them, too. Like, just to see that in a young corner like Andrew Booth Jr., and I think we're starting to see it even with Cam Dantzler a little bit.
Yeah.
That's huge because we know the egos that the NFL wide receivers have. So you need to have that kind of ego and then some sometimes as a cornerback. And I think that's a good sign, at least. Obviously, there's still things that have to be proven on the field, but
Yep.
that's what you need from a corner.
Yep.
And you see the swagger that Justin Jefferson has as a wide receiver on the offensive side. You kind of need that same type of thing defensively. So, yep, good observation there. Well, let's go ahead to the corner room where things maybe are a little bit different, I would say, maybe a little bit less confident in the corners. I'd probably put the corners right now at a B minus because I still want to see him prove it in the regular season. Like there's a lot of great things going on right now, and I think by the end of the season they could be a B plus, A minus if everything goes well. But
Yep.
I think right now, to be safe, I'm kind of grading them as a B minus.
Yeah, I think that's where I'd come in too, and they could end up being more in the C range, or they could easily be in the A range,
Yep.
depending on if Dantzler continues what he's shown in camp and plays with the same kind of confidence he showed as a rookie, and if Booth is consistent enough to be on the field, and if Caleb Evans doesn't regress under live bullets, they're going to be in good shape. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it should be an interesting year for the Vikings defensive backs. Linebackers, it's kind of hard to grade this because of the 3-4 now. So we're so used to the linebackers being the linebackers and the defensive linemen being the defensive linemen. But let's throw in the linebackers into that group, the outside linebackers, Hunter and Smith, Kendricks, Hicks. Where is the confidence level that you have with that linebacker core for the Vikings?
yeah, see, I think the first team is A.
Yeah.
The first four guys, that's an A unit there. The depth behind it is probably you know C plus B minus, largely
Yep.
unproven still. You know, doesn't mean it could be just fine, but at this point, uh, there's really no sure thing that if one of those guys goes down, this young guy can just step right in without missing a beat. There's a drop off, a significant drop.
Yes. And we saw it last year.
Yep,
The
and
nice thing
and the
this
year
year,
before.
the nice thing this year though, is that you still have a really good pass rusher on the other side if one of them goes down.
Yep,
But losing that other guy doesn't give the freedom to the other guy. I know we're talking a lot of other guy, but uh,
right.
if Zadarius Smith goes down, Danielle Hunter's freedom has just been
Yep,
stopped because there's going to be a lot more double teams, maybe triple teams, depending, and vice versa. So that's that. And you're 100% correct. I think there's going to be a big drop off if one of those guys goes down. So I'm going to probably say a B plus, and that seems maybe a little low, but just based on the depth, I'm not very
yep,
confident in
yep.
that
No,
depth.
that's pretty fair, I think. Um,
So
the one thing that intrigues me a little bit. So the outside linebackers, Smith and Hunter, those edge guys. To me, it's easier to find guys like that than a true down lineman.
mm,
4-3 end like they've had before.
yep,
Even guys like Zach McLeod and Luigi Villain, Janarius Robinson, guys like that. Like, I think they're better suited to be this edge rush guy. And
yep,
you could have a guy on the practice squad one week who comes in and plays in a game and plays a role and can be pretty effective. Like I think it's just I think they have better depth for that role than they had 4-3 down linemen ends that had to really you know base the run defense and rush the passer. So
yep, yep, 100%. I uh, I think that's a pretty good assessment for the linebacker group. Defensive line now, if you're basically just considering defensive ends and defensive tackles, and the defensive end becomes a lot less of a big deal now because of the outside linebackers are pretty much defensive ends. I mean, depending on what formation you're in, but I'm guessing that Dalvin Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips, maybe you could speak differently on this, but I feel like those two are going to be on the field a lot at the same time together.
yeah, I think so. And I think Phillips, Tomlinson, Watts are kind of their three guys. Um, I don't think anybody's elite there. Um, but those are pretty good players. Watts with a little more consistency, um, particularly in the run game. I think is maybe a little better than people realize. But they don't have anybody after those three guys that
Yep.
you have confidence is really going to press them. Unless Twyman, continues to flash as a rusher, and if Asazi shows something, in camp, and he has the ability, but I think they're very, very thin. depth wise.
Yep. Yep. I agree. So I
C,
guess C.
C
Yeah.
range there. Yep.
Yeah. C plus. I'd say for me. I do like Harrison Phillips. I think of the defensive linemen, I'd say Harrison Phillips is probably the guy that is the most upside in regards to the defensive line, because they have the linebackers again listed: Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. So we don't consider them defensive linemen anymore, which again is still just interesting to me as somebody that's always looked at the Vikings and said it's a 4-3 defense. We got the defensive linemen and the linebackers, so it's still an adjustment, but we're taking it. And I think honestly this 3-4 defense, the multiple looks they're going to give, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, just to see how much confusion they can cause for the opposing quarterback. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, maybe not so much, but some of the other quarterbacks they play throughout the year, Justin Fields, Jared
Yep.
Goff, some of those other guys, how much
Yep.
confusion is it going to be for these quarterbacks that have never seen the Vikings defense play like this or look like this?
And guys that move around to try to exploit weaknesses. They've got guys that can do that, like Zadarius Smith can do that, and Danielle Hunter can do that, and I think some of these safeties can do that. They've got enough talent to bring pressure from anywhere, and I think that'll be interesting because I think they'll scheme themselves into some sacks and some pressures and some turnovers, and
Yeah.
I don't think they did enough of that stuff in the past. Like I think they just lined guys up at positions and they didn't target the weakest link, as well as I think these guys will. So
Yeah. Yep. Well, very good. I think that's pretty much all I had planned for tonight. Is there anything, audience members, you have any questions before we wrap up here? Kevin, do you have any observations you wanted to mention? Any battles you're looking forward to continue to watch here in camp? How about wide receiver 4? Let's talk about that a little bit here. Wide receiver 4, do you feel like Amir Smith-Marset has that pretty well, or do you feel like somebody else might snag that?
I think he has that. He's got to stay on the field and he's got to be consistent though. He can flash and make plays, but he's got to be there every week. Like I think about, back in the days when Stephon Diggs was young, he would get nicked a lot and he'd miss time, and then he kind of pushed through that wall, and then he was ready to go no matter what, and he could dominate. I think Smith-Marset needs to get to that level of competitive fire in his belly. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Skolsky said, well, I guess he says that it's going to be either BC or Amir Smith-Marset that will win that 4th wide receiver spot. See, I think that could be his ceiling for BC Johnson, but I also could see a situation where the Vikings say, hey, sorry, we've got some other guys we like. You're gone. I think I could see either one of those scenarios happening for BC.
Yeah, I think the consistency question isn't there with him. He'll be consistent, but Smith-Marset will flash more and show more
speed for sure.
More matchup opportunities and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think the one spot, from all indications, Garrett Bradbury isn't better.
Yep.
So
that's what I've heard.
Like
Harrison Phillips has been eating him for lunch, kind of. That's what I've heard.
So Chris Reed, conceivably ends up taking that job, and I don't think Bradbury makes the team if that's the case. And you got Jesse Davis and Ed Ingram at right guard, and I think they're comfortable with that. And I could see that change happening. So, and I think if that's the case, it won't take the fourth preseason game to figure it out.
Yep.
Like I think it's going to show up, early on in the preseason, and if Bradbury doesn't step up soon, I think his time might be over. So.
Well, are we going to be going live when I attend training camp? I'm going to be attending training camp here in a couple of weeks for the first day of the 49ers Vikings practice. I will be there for that. So I am going to hopefully try and do some live videos. I know that Kevin O'Connell has kind of, or at least the Vikings have kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on some of the videoing. So we'll see what I can do. But I might go live just to throw out some observations I have from that practice. It's going to be an interesting practice for sure against the 49ers. A little bit of something different. All we've seen so far is the Vikings going against each other. So that'll be fun to watch. So I'll have definitely some content, whether it's videos, maybe pictures, and then hopefully a live video or two from training camp in Eagan. So that should be fun as well. Any other questions from the people listening, watching yet before we wrap up? And Kevin, I guess, is there any final statement you want to make about the Vikings before we wrap up here tonight?
Well, I'm a little envious you're going to be there for the 49er, because those will be really telling reps,
Yep.
Because they'll be trying.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
So those will just be valuable little snippets, how these guys do against real competition.
Yeah.
It'd be very telling. I think things will very much be sorting themselves up on the roster stuff, who's making it, who's not, and who they probably already have pegged for practice squad and stuff like that. I really think a lot of that stuff is determined way sooner than is reported. And I don't think preseason 3 and 4 are really when guys are making the team or not.
Yep.
I think they've seen so many reps of these guys by then that they're really in more roster architect mode than they are, player evaluation. So.
Yep, that's for sure. I'm excited, cautiously optimistic, as I keep on saying, because we know it's the Vikings and we know that they seem to always love to disappoint us, especially when our expectations have been altered, whether they're higher or lower. So, so it'll be fun, but it also could be disappointing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And Kevin, it's been good to have you back on. We do have another comment here. Only 3 preseason games this year, which I believe last year was the first year of that. And so that'll be interesting. And who knows for how much longer that'll be the case.
So that'll probably mean the third one is meaningless. But
yeah. Well, and if we get an 18-game regular season now, or 18-week regular season eventually with the next CBA or before then, who knows, then we could definitely even see a situation where there's only 2 preseason games.
Right.
Because I think that would be better for the NFL from a financial standpoint, for one, and for the players, because honestly, who really wants to go to 4 preseason games, or 3 for that matter, which we're going to see this year? And I mean, you see free preseason game tickets all the time. Like, nobody wants to go.
Yeah.
And so it's really just a dress rehearsal for those guys that are trying to make that final 53. And you really don't need 4 weeks to figure that out.
Right. Right.
So,
And in one other ex-Viking, I saw Anthony Barr signed with Dallas.
yes, Anthony Barr to the Cowboys
1-year deal.
today. And of course, Jared Allen, too, announced last week that he is going to be into the Vikings Ring of Honor. Well deserved. He was a terrorizer of Aaron Rodgers, that's for sure. And so yeah, he was fun to watch. Huge part of that 2009 defense. So looking forward to, hopefully he gets to blow the Gallahorn as well, and
Yeah.
should be a fun game there. Jared's a good guy, so
Yep.
it'll be good to have him in the Ring of Honor. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us here on the Skol Purple Podcast YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our social media platforms, TikTok, which we're not very active on. Hopefully, we'll change that here eventually. And we will also have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Skol Purple Pod. Thanks for watching, and as always, Skol.